Thanks, Ola, and I want to thank my co-panelists, especially Adna for the description of supercritical fluids, and Sahil for the plug for CO2 and all its various uses. So when I saw in the program that I was going to be the last guy speaking on the panel on the last day, on the last session, I got pretty worried. So over the last couple of days, I've been making friends with a number of people here, and I've offered a number of people a beer, free beer, if they would come to the session. So I don't know if that applies to any of you. Any hands up on that? I'm sure it's Will. I think Will's going to. Some people are here for the beer. But I should be fair to everyone. I'm buying you all a beer. It's just that it happens to be that you have to come to California to get it. So welcome to the Silicon Valley. GreenFire is a demonstration stage company with a new geothermal technology. We're headquartered in the Silicon Valley, and we just came out of stealth mode a couple of months ago. We presented a paper at the Stanford Geothermal Workshop, and we just presented a paper a couple of weeks ago at the Supercritical Power Cycles Technology Symposium in San Antonio, Texas. So this is our first exposure to the international community, so if you haven't heard of us, that's quite appropriate. That's just fine. So, yes, the same presentation. What is it? My goal today is to describe what Eco2G is, how Eco2G works, why bother with Eco2G, and then what our next steps are. Now, one description is from our acronym. The Eco2G is a little pretentious. So we have great ecological characteristics. So that's the first part of the acronym. We use CO2 in the middle, and then we claim to be a next generation of geothermal technology, and that is definitely pretentious. So apologies for that. So what is it? I have a few ways to describe what Eco2G is. The first is a physical description you see here. So the picture on the left really needs no description because you all know a lot about it. But the key elements would be that it's conventional hydrothermal. Geothermal relies on fractures and permeability, and whether that's natural or engineered. And it also relies on water circulation, again, natural or engineered. But what if we didn't have to rely on water circulation, fractures are engineered? What if we didn't have to worry about water issues? And certainly what I hear when I go to geothermal conferences, there's a lot of issues related to these movement of the fluids and the interaction with the native resource. So in contrast, what we're doing with Eco2G is we're just taking supercritical CO2 and keeping it entirely in a entirely closed loop system. So we're not relying on water. We're not trying to find or maintain permeability. We're going hotter and deeper, as you can see. We're entirely complementary with hydrothermal technologies, and we can access the hotter areas of the geothermal resource that hydrothermal technology cannot. So another answer to the question what Eco2G is we're a convergence of technology. And I'm going to start in the southwest corner here and then work around the circle. So we're the result of a lot of research from a lot of scientific labs. So a number of the U.S. Department of Energy labs have done research of great interest to us. The Los Alamos lab, right after the atomic bomb, they created Eco2G. That was a joke, so not good. The Lawrence Berkeley lab, Patrick Jobson is here representing the group we work with there. And we're also working with Lawrence Livermore lab. We've also been inspired by people in this room. The IDDP project here in Iceland is very interesting to us because of going hotter and deeper. We're interested in the Japan Beyond Brittle Zone project and also the Hades project in New Zealand, which I think stands for Hotter and Deeper Experimental Science or something. In terms of our own intellectual property, GreenFire is the exclusive licensee of a license from Lawrence Livermore for the circulation of supercritical CO2 in a looped system. We've added a number of variations on the concept, and indeed, one of the reasons we were in stealth mode until a couple of months ago was to get all of our patents filed. So we've, in the top box here, we've done extensive advanced modeling, and much of that has been with the help of Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. And what we've done in that is optimize a number of the parameters. I'm not a tech guy, but it's incredibly complex. And we really appreciate the support we've received from various folks there, including some people affiliated with professors at the right hand of the corner of this area here, Mr. Tester's professors. And Don Fox, I think, deserves a call out here. All right. In the next box, we are the lucky beneficiaries of the incredible advances being made in oil and gas drilling. Much of the stuff I'm talking about here, going hotter and deeper, would just not have been possible. And I know some people around the conference here have laughed a little bit about us going this hot and deep, but I assure you that we're getting a lot of serious interest from the high-tech drilling firms. So we believe that it's not only possible, but possible now. And then another happy confluence of events, for us at least, is the development of supercritical CO2 turbines, which have a number of advantages that are mostly efficiency and economics, because they can be so much more compact. So how does Eco2G work? Well, it's proprietary in part, but a lot is not proprietary, and that is that the thermal siphon works. The resource depletion is modest, and the supercritical CO2 power cycle works. So again, this is a little more. Let's follow the cold supercritical CO2 down, across, and up. Now this is a conceptual model. There are different architectures. There's the squid, the saguaro cactus. There are many different architectures you can come up with, but they all amount to circulating the supercritical CO2. So I'm going to use a loop. And the dimensions to keep in mind here, over on the left, we have a 1.25 kilometers on the injection side, 3 to 3.5 kilometers on the horizontal well, and 2.5 going back up again. So let's see what happens. Now let's lay that loop flat and put it on the x-axis here, so we get 8 kilometers flat across the bottom. And our density is in red, and the pressure is in blue. So in the first section of the well, the injection well portion, high density makes for a big increase in pressure from both the compression and the heat transfer. So it's in here, right? In the middle horizontal section, the density goes down as the fluid heats up, but the pressure is still maintained. In the last section of the well, the production well, the density and pressure both go down a lot, but due to the expansion in the production well, but note, and this is key, that where pressure starts, and pressure should be measured over here, so at about 8 or so megapascals, it ends up at closer to 13 megapascals. So this is the density and pressure differential that accounts for the thermal siphon. And the thermal siphon is critical, because the thermal siphon allows us to not pump the fluid. So we have no parasitic load. It pumps itself at the flow rates that we need for the process. And it produces a lot of the power we get out of the system. So that's key. Another question that everyone has, what about thermal depletion? You're taking a pipe of cold CO2 and putting it into the water. What is it going to do to the country rock? Great question. We've modeled that, and we have our own 1D model on the left. The model on the right was done courtesy of Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. But as you can see, in each case, there's really very modest thermal depletion. We calculated at about 20% over a period of 30 years. How does the power cycle work? Well, let's take a quick tour here. Note, and thank you for describing vapor domes earlier. So everything we're doing here is over the vapor dome and on the right side of it, so we stay supercritical in all phases. We're not flashing anything here, okay? And let's start here, and this is our inlet pipes that we gain a lot of temperature in the injection well due to compression and heat transfer. In the horizontal well, which is yellow, we gain temperature due to heat transfer. Then in the red portion, this is expansion up the production well, so we lose temperature there. And then across the turbine, we lose further temperature, but of course we're doing the work and expanding at that point. And we return to the beginning part of the cycle with heat rejection. And I should point out a couple of the papers here, and I think people get copies of these slides, but this was a paper presented at the San Antonio Supercritical Technologies Conference last month. So, on to our next question. Why bother with Eco2G, right? Let's go clockwise from 3 o'clock at this point. There are a number of underperforming hydrothermal plants, at least in California where we know them the most. Of the 43 operating plants in California, these are my statistics, it's not good. 75% of the plants were producing at less than 85% of their design capacity. 65% were producing at less than 75% of their design capacity. As a finance guy, this is getting pretty troubling. Many are in trouble both under their power purchase agreements or economically in general. So what GreenFire can do is to co-locate with these various different existing hydrothermal projects and take advantage of the fact that there are permits in place, the transmission availability is there, the infrastructure is in place, et cetera. Another reason Eco2G makes sense is because of limited water availability, and not just in a drought-stricken area in any geothermal resource. So that is the degradation that's often due to water availability and circulation problems, and it's something we just don't worry about. But by going to low permeability areas, we're really addressing a completely different part of the market. What's this? This is another way to look at the complementarity of Eco2G with hydrothermal and EGS. The U.S. Geologic Survey estimates that on the left-hand side of the high permeability areas, it represents less than 20% of the available geothermal heat, whereas the hot, dry rock, the right-hand side, which we're just calling low permeability here, is 80% or more of what's available, at least in the United States. So we have a real opportunity here. We're not really interested in the brittle zone, probably not hot enough for us typically. We could share the space of the brittle zone when it gets hot and hydro EGS, but in the plastic zone or the brittle ductile transition zone, we think our technology would be fully complementary. Environmental issues. We share a number of all I guess, of the environmental advantages of geothermal, but we actually don't trigger some of the disadvantages. So what are some of the differences? This lists all of the ecological advantages. Under the air and water bullet up here, bullet number 2 here, little or no water consumption. Bullet 3, no contact with the subsurface water. All we're doing is keeping our fluid in the pipe, doesn't touch anything. We've talked to regulators, at least in California, which is a highly regulated area, and they kind of scratch their heads and ask, well, you're not really doing anything to the resource, so we're not too sure what to regulate. I'm sure they'll come up with something, but again, we just have a pipe in the ground. The only thing we're pulling out is heat. Under the public safety bullet here, there's nothing to induce the seismicity. We're not injecting anything. We heard about that as a problem here in Iceland. And then for land usage, we have, and I'm not sure where else this is a problem, but I know it in California it is, because the surface subsidence is a major concern as fluids are pumped into the rock sources. What are we doing next as a company? Well, we're a demonstration stage company. By the end of the year, we hope to have our demonstrator going. We've got MOUs with 3 different parties now. This is principally just to verify our model. They're not going to be commercial scale facilities. One of the reasons I'm here is that we're seeking strategic and project partners. So if you have a skill and think you want to work with us, we'd be interested in talking to you. I'm also seeking host geothermal partners. So we're interested in co-locating at and integrating our Eco2G technology in your hydrothermal projects, although not interfering with them. What are we looking for in terms of parameters? We're talking hot, so greater than 400 degrees C is good for us. Impermeable is actually a little bit better than permeable, even though sometimes the conduction or convection can help us, but on balance, we'd rather have impermeable rock. Well-defined geophysics already in place would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Existing infrastructure, permits, the availability of transmission lines, et cetera. A power purchase agreement in place with at over 10 cents a kilowatt hour would be really nice. We expect ultimately we'll be able to get to 5 cents. And this is not a fundraising pitch, but this summer we will be fundraising. So who are we? We're not a big company, but there we are. We're particularly happy with our advisory board. They've been incredibly useful. I think they've seen the potential of the technology going forward as an alternative to some stalled areas of hydrothermal, geothermal production. We're very happy with our collaborating research partners as well. I'm not going to go through this slide because it's really just kind of a summary of what I've told you, but applying it to the business case. So if you're here from the business point of view, take a look at this or look at it later. I think the slides are all going to be available to conference attendees. What we're really doing is when you combine all the features together, it does make a superior business model because it reduces the geothermal risk, as you can tell. All we're looking for is hot rock. That should be a lot easier to find than fissures in circulation. We're reducing the costs, we are producing competitively priced power, and doing it with excellent environmental benefits. So far, we can't figure out any reason anyone would object on the environmental side. So thank you very much, and to those of you who I promised a beer, I'll be good for it. Thank you very much.